Volunteering.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
I'm a notorious pen thief.
Yeah. We'll just get. Traffic is bad, so if we gotta finish something up and get.
So I'll hear and sit here and talk to my man.
Okay.
How you doing? What's up, Mal? Should be there. Yeah.
Document, correct? Oh, I was so confused looking at this agenda.
Go ahead and get started. Are we on? Yes. Are we ready? Yes. Okay. Good. All right. So welcome everybody. Sorry we're starting late, but I had heard that there was some traffic, and the necklace issues, going on. So welcome. My name is Stephanie Craybill. For those of you, I don't think there's anybody really new. Come on in. Have a seat. Yeah, just pick a seat, any seat. No, up here. No, girl. No, girl. You're invited guest. You're up here.
Right in the middle, Jen.
Yeah. So yeah. So everybody. Does everybody have in front of them an agenda? Okay. It's going to be real simple and real informal today. So kind of just before we go. We don't really need to approve the agenda, but if anybody has anything else that they want, but this is going to be real simple to start with, is, we haven't met, since February of 2022. And so we're all getting back together and getting the gang back together, and the people sitting here, most of you actually, I'm looking around, like half of us were on the original committee, and the other half are people that are standing in for people that were on the original committee based on their participation in this. So what I thought we would do is just take a minute to just go around the room, and if everybody just introduce themselves and what your role is, either in the school district or as a community partner, and if you have any specific thing you want to add about why you were on the Title IX committee, to get started. So I'll go ahead and start. So Stephanie Craybill, I am a board member, and I am the chair of this committee, and have been the chair of this committee. This is my third year, doing that. I've been on this committee since its inception in 2019. When I started, I was the parent rep, for that. So I've been with this group, from the very beginning. And of course, the inclusion and is one of my big things, and so that's why I like the Title IX concept, so that we get. And I'm also a former student athlete, in high school and in college. So, athletics is important to me as well. So that's me. So how about if we start with Leslie down there?
I'm Leslie Cohen. I too was an original member of the committee. I am the parent of 2 transgender adults and have been active in advocating for the rights of transgender folks, and particularly transgender children. I've worked with a lot of families in New Hanover, Pender, Brunswick, seeing what these kids are going through in their school experiences, see the negative effects that this has had on their mental health. Am fully aware of the suicide risk. I mean, we've lost more than one, and I don't know if people really realize that in New Hanover schools. Since I've been involved the last 4 years, we've lost a couple of students to suicide because they were trans, and were not able to handle the bullying and things that were going on. So I'm very passionate about these issues, and I started working on those issues a couple of years before this committee was formed, and I think I had a little influence on that coming to fruition.
Thank you.
I'm Deanna Leak. I'm the principal of Murray Middle School. And this work is important. The work we do in the schools is important all day, every day. And in doing that work, it's important that we ensure that we are treating all human beings, children and adults, fairly and equitably through that work.
Thank you.
I'm Kelly Lewis. I'm the athletic director for the school system as well as driver's ed coordinator. And I guess by what I just said, being the athletic director is why I'm sitting here on this committee.
And you're
And
valuable.
we
Yes.
have.
Okay.
I'm Krista Tennis Brown. I'm currently the principal at Anderson Elementary School, and I formerly was an assistant principal and athletic director at Howard High School. So I believe that's why I'm at this table, just due to the broad experiences I've had in New Hanover County Schools.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leah Bressler. I am the Title IX investigator for New Hanover County Schools, and I am here today in that capacity. So
Well, tell us some of your background, because I was very impressed when I heard your background.
I have been a school teacher. I am certified to teach K through 12 in EC and also K-6 in regular education. I've studied and practiced law for many years in private practice. Some of my work included school systems as clients, and I came most recently from private sector working in employee relations and doing investigation work for them. And I'm excited to be here and use the breadth and combination of my experience in Title IX to help New Hanover County students.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Henry. I am the Title IX coordinator. I came to New Hanover County in November of 2020 as the investigator, and I worked for Jarrell. You all remember Jarrell. Then when Jarrell left, I fleeted up to be the coordinator, and I took that job in July of 2023. So here I am.
My name is Veronica Edge. I'm the supervisor of secondary school counseling and student records for New Hanover County Schools. I find it very valuable as a 19-year school counselor that we make sure that all students get the support they need to be successful, grades K through 12. So I'm just happy to be in the room.
Greetings, my name is Malcolm Johnson. I'm here as the Chief Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Officer for New Hanover County Schools, and I'm here for just a variation of what everyone has said and will say.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Terrell Nicholson. I am the Director of Title IX and Clery Compliance at UNCW. I'm actually very new to this position. I started here on January the 2nd. I came here from East Carolina University working in our Office for Equity and Diversity as a Title IX Equal Opportunity Compliance Specialist, as well as an investigator before that. And prior to that, I had practiced law for 10 years, mostly criminal defense, but as well as some civil matters. I went into law because I wanted to make sure that all laws, policies and procedures were being followed equitably and fairly to all people, and so that actually drove the work, specifically going into higher education. So I'm happy to be here as a community partner. Obviously, UNCW has ownership of DC Virgo, and which is students are feeding in from New Hanover County Schools and will ultimately go back into New Hanover County Schools once they finish their time there. So I'm here as a wonderful, hopefully, community partner.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm Amanda Piner. I'm prevention educator over at RCC of Coastal Horizons, community partner, and we're just here to support the schools and in turn support the youth in our school systems.
I'm Janie Dowda. I work with Amanda at Coastal Horizons RCC. I'm the Rape Prevention Education Coordinator. Short, it's called RPE. It's a program that is grant funded, so I've led that for about 6 years, and a lot of that has worked with school programming and being a part of this committee. So, yeah.
And both of you did the Shifting Boundaries program.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was one of our signature
And bringing in the
trainings
bystander.
and bringing in the bystanders. So that is important for those of us who here didn't know that. But thank you for that.
I'm Jen Geller, Executive Director of HR. I work very closely with Dr. Barnes, and he wasn't able to be here today, so that's why I wasn't sure if I was coming just to hang out or coming here
No,
and
you're
needed
here
to
to
see
be
the
a
table. So
participant.
happy to be here, and look forward to just learning more. Usually I watch from my office, but I'm glad to be here. So.
I am Pat Bradford, New Hanover County Board of Education. I am here because I have just been appointed by our chairman to be on this committee.
Okay, so thank you all for taking that time. Sometimes it's it's easier to have the dialogue if you kind of know where everybody's coming from a little bit. So in front of you too, with your agenda, there are the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was February the 21st, 2022. Quite some time ago. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at those on Assembly, or if you want to just take a minute just to glance through those. one of the things that all of our committees, are supposed to do is, keep a group memory or keep minutes. We haven't had a chance to approve these minutes because we haven't had a meeting in quite some time, and we'll explain why that is. So if you want to just take a minute to glance through those, I'd appreciate it. It's not long.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
question. Up at the top, it says present in person, and it lists you. And then it comes down, it says participating by Zoom, and it lists you. Is that a typo? Is that two different meetings?
I don't see what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
First page,
Yeah.
present in person, the top. And then after the welcome, present in person, also participating in Zoom. Is it two meetings?
There was not two meetings. So that might have just been, that is probably wrong, because we met together. Then I didn't pick that up, thank you. Oh, no, wait a minute, you know what? I think we all participated in Zoom at that point. We weren't meeting, so the participating in person, just Jarrell and Kim was here, our previous admin, support. So now we have, and we should have this is Pat Kadetsky, who is our admin support. She replaced Kim Joy. No one can replace Kim, but Pat is the new support for us, so we appreciate you, Pat, thank you. And Anita Baggy, she is our, communications technology support, which we need so that we can hear each other, and the people who are listening can hear. So yeah, all of us participated in Zoom. That was 2022 was kind of in that transition, kind of time. But you can see we really didn't talk too much. The biggest thing we talked about was the student survey that we had done, just about 5 months earlier than that. So I would just like to make a motion that we accept these minutes, as presented.
With the correction.
Second that? Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. All right, so the next thing on our agenda is we have, it says right here that we have an update from our Title IX coordinator, and then so John Henry is going to go ahead and do that, and then we also are going to squeeze in there an update from our athletic director. Okay, so that you guys can kind of tag team that. Okay, thanks, John.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Crable. Appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to come here. I'm going to give you a little update from our last meeting in August of 2020. A lot has been happening in the Title IX world, so I just want to bring you up to speed on what that is. First is, we've already discussed it, our whole office is turned over. So Drell's left, I'm the coordinator, Leah's the investigator, and Pat is our administrator's support and our paralegal. Stats. 2021 through 2022, we had a total of 225 Title IX reports. That's either through 360 or through telephone or just verbally to us. I'm sorry, 2021 to 2022, 225. 2022 to 2023, 256. And this year, starting August 1st until January 31st of 2024, we've had 70 reports. So it's fell off a little bit this year, but this thing ebbs and flows. I mean, before Christmas, we were manageable, but ever since Christmas, it's been on fire. So it's starting to increase. So that 70 doesn't really have me too concerned, but I think we're probably going to end up getting more in there. So that's our stats for the last 2 years. Federal regulations are going to change. So as all of you probably know, Title IX regulations change with whoever's in the White House. So when President Obama came aboard, he had certain regulations that didn't really have too much due process. When President Trump came in, he went the complete opposite way. He had a lot of due process in there. And now when President Biden took office almost 3.5 years ago, he proposed some regulations which are still in the works right now. So they've taken almost 3.5 years to get through the whole sausage making process. And they're predicted to be published, well, they were supposed to be in the fall of 2023, and then it was the spring of 24, and now we're looking at the summer of 2024. And of course, we have an election coming up too, so who knows what's going to happen with that. So right now, we're still operating on President Trump's rules through the Department of Education. So those rules, the new Biden rules, and again, it's a lot of speculation out there, but big changes are going to be, one is the Davis standard. And I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Davis standard, but one of the definitions of sexual harassment under Title IX is that it's got to be unwelcome conduct that's so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies students access to our educational programs. So right now, the way that reads is all three. So in order to prove that, we have to prove all three of those: severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. The proposed rule change is going to change that "and" words on meaning to an "or." And if that goes through, if that's what comes out on the other end, then we only need to prove one of those things. So that's going to change the practice a little bit. And of course, that will change our policy rules. 1725 and 1726 are New Hanover County policies that govern Title IX, but those would have to change with that. So the Davis standard may be changing. Two, I use the word jurisdiction, which is probably a bad word to use, but President Biden has proposed broadening the scope of our jurisdiction. So basically, if something happens off campus between our students, that's fair game for us to do Title IX. Right now, it's kind of limited to they have to be participating in one of our programs, or they have to be on school property to do something like that. But it's going to broaden, the aperture is going to broaden, and it's going to be, there's going to be a lot more cases that are going to come in because of where it happened. So if it's outside the campus or outside one of our programs, there's a chance that we may be applying Title IX to it. And then the final one, yes ma'am.
To that point too, the North Carolina School Boards Association, at our last two legal conferences, this has come up. And it's under debate a lot on what, like, and you guys are familiar with that as principals, with social media. You know, if it happens, if it's off campus, can we actually enforce things on campus? And the overall, what we've been told is that if it impacts what's going on campus, then that kind of stuff has to be considered. So, you know, you're right, spot on that. So I just wanted to say that.
No, yeah, it's going to open up. It's going to open up. And then the final thing, again, this is all proposed, and it's just scuttlebutt that we're hearing through the grapevine about what might be approved or not, but it's the whole transgender issue. So right now, when President Biden took over his first day of office, he published 2 executive orders, and he basically tasked his Department of Education to look, hey, take a look at all the rules and come back to me with some proposed changes, and that's what they did. And one of the things that he was looking at was Title IX school district cannot discriminate on the basis of sex. 3-letter word, sex. But what he's proposing is that 3-letter word, sex, not only includes your gender, male, female, it includes your sexual orientation and your gender identity. So he's going to open up the definition of sexual harassment, the key word being sex, to include all those other things. So that's going to open it up big. All right, so that, again, those are proposed changes that we're hearing through the grapevine that are going to come out. We'll see in a couple months what actually is going to become regulation. And again, like I said, that regulation is going to force us to change or modify our policies as they exist now. So that's that. Parental Bill of Rights. So North Carolina, actually let me go towards the athletic side of it here. So North Carolina published a law that requires school districts to make sports teams according to the gender. So boys teams will be boys, men's, or male teams. Girls, women, or female teams. And if a person identifies as a female, then they cannot play on the boys team. That's North Carolina law right now, the way it stands. And then we filed in trace with policy, and I forget the policy number, but that's in our policy. 3620. Okay. So we follow in trace with the policy. So obviously with what I informed you about with President Biden's thing, that may be changing, or at least heading towards a collision course. Because you got North Carolina saying one thing, and you may have the feds saying something else, and it's gonna collide somewhere along the way. We just don't want to be the first one to be in that line. So that's out there. Parental Bill of Rights, as you all know, that Parental Bill of Rights came into effect in August 12th or 15th of 2023. They passed a law and they said, man, make this effective the next day. So it came in. So as far as the Title IX overlap is with pronoun use and change of your name. When I say change your name, not the actual legal change of your name, but change your name inside the school district. So there's a couple things that the North Carolina law requires us as a school district to do. First is that we have to notify the parents of the student's request of either pronoun change or name change before we do anything. So we got to notify mom and dad that the student has requested to change the pronouns or use preferred pronouns or to change the name. That's one piece. The other piece is there's two items that we're required to do at least one of those, or we can do both of them. Number one is that we have to encourage the student to discuss this with their mom and dad. And two, facilitate a discussion between mom and dad and the student. So that's North Carolina law. We have to do one of those or both of those. And so that's out there. Then we come up to the facilities. I know in 2022 we did a whole assessment or consultation. We hired a firm to consult on how we were doing in adhering to Title IX. And they came up with some ideas, or they said we're doing good except for a couple of playing fields. I think, Kelly, this might be a good way to segue to you to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, sure. One thing I will, to piggyback on what Mr. Henry said about the High School Athletic Association, they did have a transgender policy. But then when, as you know, the state is kind of now wanting to take over high school athletics, and so general legislature now says that the High School Association cannot have that policy. So it's reproductive gender at birth is all that is allowed in the public schools. But like Mr. Henry said, the federal will trump the state. And then to his point, we did a voluntary, we did not receive a OCR complaint on any of our athletics. This was a voluntary review that we did of all our high schools and middle schools, and we hired a third party, and she came up and spent a week with us, and I went with her to every site, every athletic site. We toured everything that we had, and overall, we were in very, very good shape because the only main discrepancies we found where there could be a complaint was the baseball and softball differences between New Hanover and Hoggard. As you know, New Hanover baseball plays on Buck Hardy Field, which the Sharks keep up, so we know what that looks like. New Hanover softball played over at Godwin, over by the port, and if you've been by there, you know what that looks like. And then Hoggard baseball and Hoggard softball are right beside each other, and there were definitely some inconsistencies there. So we had our 95% construction document meeting last week to start this project, and we have our pre-bid meeting over at Hoggard next week because the bid is getting ready to go out for the improvements to Hoggard softball and Godwin over there on Shipyard. And that's all of our other facilities, our middle school facilities. There were little things that we had to do, but that is where we were. And when Jarrell, all this Mr. Lewis, I will tell you, is not me. That was Jarrell. He made that presentation before the school board, and then this is where we are. And that project, well, they will start in May. We're going through this season. Softball's getting ready to start Wednesday. So at the end of softball season in May, those fields, that's when it will start. So it'll start in May and to be released to us hopefully by February 1 of 25. All those improvements will be done.
Yeah, and I apologize for not writing down the date that we had the board presentation, but it is, I can find that out if you're interested, so you can go back and listen if you want to do that, because they laid it all out for us.
Yeah, and then the last, yes, sir.
Thank you, Kelly.
The last bit was the training. And so the training obviously is continuous all the time. So first of all, within my office, we need to be trained up, and so we get that annual training. But we train the beginning teachers. We have in the summer, we train all the faculty, we train the coaches and all the administrators. Any chance that we get to get in front of some folks, we do it. And with the changes coming down, we're gonna do it again. So training's out there. And with that, Ms. Grable, that's it, unless anyone has any questions about any stuff that we talked about.
Okay, so
Okay,
I'm going
good.
to kind of like add just a tad bit more onto that. Thank you for that report, because one of the reasons that we have not met is, number one, because we've been waiting diligently for the Biden administration's rules and regulations to come out. And they kept saying they were coming out, and then the comment period, went on and on. And that's not negative, it's just been longer than anticipated. So that was there. But I did want to just go back a little bit for those of you who were not part of the committee before, is that we had when the committee was first started, we had set forth, the chairman of the board was Lisa Estep, and she had set forth some goals. Number one was we have to make sure that we have policies in place, that, because our policies were not in place. Well, they were there, but they weren't, comprehensive enough. So that is when we started our affiliation with the NCSBA's policy updating service. So that's their job, is they're charged with keeping school districts updated on all kinds of stuff. They followed this in the legislature. So then we needed policies, and in order to do that, we needed a Title IX coordinator, because we had a Title IX coordinator, but didn't have all the trainings that the policy said that we should have. So we hired Jarrell. Jarrell came on. And so then we set up the committee, and Ms. Estep invited, anybody in the community that had any interest at all, from our community partners to the people in the district, parents, community members, so that we could get a well-rounded, input on what was being happening. And so, well, the impetus for all that was for, our sexual misconduct, lawsuit. So that is what started the whole thing. So we put in place, 3 different committees, education, how we're going to educate ourselves on what Title IX is. A lot of people think it's just sports, but it's actually academics, it's sports, it's harassment, it's bullying, and it's taken on like a whole new life. So that 50 years ago was not the same as what we're dealing with now. And then training, what kind of trainings do we need, and who can provide that training? And that's where a lot of our community partners came in, and we are so appreciative of the efforts that they brought forth for us. And then the third was to get community partners, to help us with that training. So we've kind of met, we have, and to put good solid training programs in place. And so you had mentioned that, but I wanted to just read, if you don't mind, what you had said in your report to us, that the Title IX office provides presentations, discussions, scenario training for our principals, for our assistant principals, for our beginning teachers, our parent liaisons, our social workers, our counselors, our coaches, our custodians, our bus drivers, everybody, everybody is a stakeholder with this. Everybody has the obligation to report something that just doesn't seem right. And then that's where we turn it over, to the Title IX coordinator and his investigators, that in order to discern if this is legitimate Title IX concern or if it's not. And just because, and you said this very eloquently before, just because it's not Title IX doesn't mean we still don't have an issue somewhere. And so that is up to you to decide and get to the right people, like maybe to HR or to the principals. So it's a well-oiled machine, and I kind of look at it, a lot of you guys are young. Did you ever have spirographs? You have the one wheel in there, you put your pencil in, and then you got all the other things, and you start turning your wheel, and the other wheels start turning. So that is how I kind of see our Title IX department, is that the investigation is just the tip of the iceberg. Everything, the report is just the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted everyone to know that we are following through, with all the things that our committee was designed to do. Our caseload has gone up, but I think it's because people now understand more what this means. And they have an avenue for reporting, and that's what we found in our Title IX survey, was that some people were more familiar with the reporting process than others. So that's where we knew how we had to beef up our training. So I just wanted everyone to, those of you who were here before, kind of know that. those of you who are principals have been following along, and your training belt is getting heavy, you know, with all the new stuff that you have. So I did want to just make sure we were there. So back in the fall, I had, and Jarrell and I had talked about that a lot. Stephanie Walker was a previous, you know, board member with me, and then last year it was Melissa Mason with me. And we had talked with John when he was, you know, the interim, you know, Title IX. So is this board committee the best way that we can manage Title IX, you know, issues within our district? And at the time, at one point back in February, we had even had discussions with our EDI committee on, is this like a subset of EDI? And before we even got to that discussion, that's when Dr. Smith was our chief EDI officer, and then she retired. So we didn't have a chance, you know, to even explore that merge. So, and so what I wanted to bring, so I waited for, you know, 2 years, so we trying to get some, you know, Title IX. Oh, wait a minute, you know, stop. We didn't even finish going around there. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. I'm looking right at you. I told you I was going to ask you something, and I'm like, wait a minute, I skipped him completely. So my thoughts from bringing us all together was I just wanted us to, I wanted to throw 2 things out, but that is just 2 things I'm throwing out. It should not stop any of our discussion. You know, please feel free to just be open with what your concerns are, what your pros, your cons, and we'll jot all those down. But do we need a board committee? The board committee being where a board member runs the committee and uses the subject matter expert as a support for that. Or do we look at perhaps having an advisory committee, which is a board member could be on it, but it would be managed within the school district. Kind of like, for those of you who are in the school district, like our curriculum committee, or our calendar committee, or our AIG committee, or our students with special needs committee. So we have those kind of advisories. So I just wanted to kind of see what you all thought about that. And the idea being, if we had advisory, if this was an advisory committee, then the committee would make a report to the whole entire board at some regular frequency, you know, quarterly, at the end of every semester, annually, whatever the committee kind of thought was the best thing, so that Colonel Henry and his department, in conjunction with other applicable departments like HR, you know, could do the work, because we can't hear half of what they do because it's, you know, FERPA protected. So we can't hear that. So it's better for, you know, it might be better for us to just receive information. But with that, so I'm looking right, you know, at Mr. Nicholson. So at UNCW, could you kind of describe what your structure looks like, you know, for, I'm sure you're a Title IX department of 1 or 2, you know, kind of like what we are, or maybe not, but could you talk us through that?
Yes.
As best you can, for like being on board for 2 days, yeah.
Yeah, only being on for a little over a month at this point. So technically in our office, so we do have a director position, myself. There is an assistant director, and 2 investigators and an admin specialist. So essentially, but we also go under a dual investigator model. So even though we have 2 investigators, we may link up with some of the ER investigators from HR, as well as we may pull from faculty staff as well in terms of that. In terms of structuring and how we update our board of directors, to my understanding, I will generally am responsible for giving a presentation at least once a semester to our board of directors. And also providing not just update, but potentially training to the board of directors, so that they are also aware of kind of what's going on in Title IX, and they are also have that kind of training, because obviously under Title IX, anyone involved in the process should have, any Title IX personnel essentially should have the proper Title IX training. So they get that directly from us. So that's essentially kind of how our structure works.
Okay. Does someone from your Board of Trustees, your Board of Directors, are they on they're not really, you don't really have a committee, is that what I'm hearing?
No,
Okay.
there's no committee. We are an actual office within
Okay.
HR. So we're a subdivision of HR at this point.
And that's kind of what we are right now, okay? All right. Thank you, 'cause that just offers a little bit more perspective to this group as we're talking. So you want to just go around the room? You want to start over here again, Leslie, or you want to start over here, Ms. Bradford?
I'm just listening.
Okay.
Taking notes.
Jennifer, you want to give us a roll?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, different models, based on, I think, what intended outcomes are, what would be the goal, in this forum, or with this structure, or is there a better way to meet the same goals? I think a lot of what we've all talked about today, so.
Okay, so I guess I'm jotting down, the words that came to my mind, I just heard was intended goals, so we would need
And
to decide
outcomes,
what we wanted any kind of committee to do, no matter who would be leading that committee. So thank you, that's,
Really quick, if we shift from the board committee model to the advisory model, wouldn't that shift who sits on the committee? For example, if this is an advisory committee, would we want to be sure that we have a representative from all, like, district departments?
yeah, and that's
So
what,
that open it up. I'm just saying, so to consider, are we going to open up, or are we going to reconsider who sits on
and that
the
would be
committee?
something that our group, either this
Okay.
group, or if we decide, whatever kind of group we decide might be the leadership, yeah, I mean, that's obvious, because that's what our policy 2230, which is board committees, it outlines that pretty specifically. That you solicit the appropriate membership, through our universal application, making sure that we have all the stakeholders that should be at the table are there for decision-making, purposes. Yeah, so that's key. Okay, go ahead, Jane.
I think the reason why this committee started was because there was a reaction and they needed that committee, they needed that policy change. So I would think, what is the goal of the committee? Is it going to be like preventative and education and like kind of that continued present thought, or is it going to be reactive all the time? And then that might help give us the project and the outcomes, right?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up, because we were clearly reactive. That we probably would have just kept on, like we were with, an untrained, Title IX person who basically was, acting as our athletic director. So we were coming at it from the sports perspective and not all the rest of the perspectives. So
Yeah.
that is a very good point.
Yeah, when it's a perfect time because the policy the Title IX has checked off those
Yes,
projects. So now, like, what is the goal here?
yep.
I would say the same thing as Janie. I think
Ditto,
that kind
yeah.
of, I would just add, like, I know that we also serve on the Student Health Advisory Committee, the SHAC Committee for New Hanover County Schools, and one thing I really appreciate about that is the voices that get to come to the table. We are able to bring in lots of community partners, so many representatives from different schools, so there's even been a student voice there, so that might offer up some opportunity for different minds to be at the table as well.
Yeah, and so that is another prime example. SHAC is one of our advisory teams that one board member sits on as just,
Yeah.
a participatory member. And we have parents, we have all of you guys, to do. So that is a perfect analogy, so thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Well, ditto to everything everybody said, but also just a reflective practice of what worked, what didn't work, and how we can make it better, number one, for our students and our community. So that's
Okay.
important.
You kind of weighed in, but any thoughts on just from an organizational point of view, what might come to mind?
Well, I will start off by saying, one of the phrases I always like to say is that Title IX is too costly to get wrong. And it's just one of those areas that you do not want to slack off on any type of situation. I, being a Title IX coordinator, and certainly sympathize with my fellow Title IX coordinator, and those co-laborers in doing the work, you want to make sure that you are not always reactive, and you want to have some structure set in place to be able to kind of address issues and to be able to think ahead. And Title IX, again, is one of those areas where it's always subject to change because, you know, as Mr. Henry stated, you're literally talking about something that, depending on who wins a presidential election, you're talking about updating, taking away, changing, doing all these things to the policy, and you want to make sure you have a structure that is in place that can constantly, one, be aware of these changes, but then two, also have that training and understanding of how to update policies and how you want to do it, even want to do those things. So I'll just kind of leave that as just a general type of kind of thought in terms of making sure that you do have a structure that is able to meet those needs and to understand kind of the ever-evolving world that is Title IX.
Yeah, so flexibility, but yeah, and understanding of what the law actually is. And then we have to make our policies match that. Okay, Malcolm, did you want to add anything in there other than what you had said before?
Only thing additionally, yes, supporting the idea of the advisory, but just being intentional about making sure that we are able to look at the legislative and have a lot of discourse around the implications, and that's from all aspects of our school district. So that's why I was speaking to earlier about who we're going to have at the table, and making sure we can have that conversation, then serve as that preventative model to push out information. I think that will serve as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with it. We got to get out of reactive, you know, and also to that point, when you were rattling off the numbers, you know, to us, that it looks like our numbers are kind of going up on reports. But to me, the beauty, if that's not the right word, but is that people are feeling more comfortable in reporting, and we are able to handle issues much lower, you know, much closer to the source before we have to have a huge complaint or a lawsuit or an OCR complaint. You know, it allows us to, you know, get in there and skim off the folks that, and the behaviors that we don't want. So did you want to add anything, or?
Just, you know, we just figure out what our goals are. And, you know, at the end of the day, we want to make sure the students are comfortable and safe at school. I mean, that's the bottom line. And just being in the job in both jobs for a year or two, you know, we solve a lot of these things at the principal level, principal/parent level. A lot of it's just getting the parents into the school and having them talk, explain the rights and how the process works. And I found that as very beneficial, educating both the principals and the parents.
Yeah.
We usually end that, you know, we slap the table, it's like, okay, everything's cool. And I don't want to say we avoid the Title IX process, but we don't have to go through it. We can handle it locally at the school, which I think at the end of the day is the best place to solve it.
And I would also like to just add in there on when you said make sure that students feel comfortable and safe at school, but we also want to make sure that our staff is comfortable and safe at school, because they can, you know, violate each other, you know, as adults, or, you know, adults on students, you know, so we've got all kinds of permutations. So it's all of us, you know, and a parent, you know, shouldn't have to feel like something's happening, you know, even though we don't cover parents, but, you know, we do have an avenue, you know, for community members and everybody to support. Yes, ma'am.
A question for John. You said when you started that since Christmas it's been on fire. So the uptick is on fire. So why?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What's the why?
Yeah, I don't know, Pat. I don't know, because it ebbs and flows. You know, sometimes, some weeks or maybe a month it'll be manageable, and in the last couple of weeks, it's just the phone just doesn't stop ringing. I don't know why that is or
So
not.
all the way through the month of January then, into February?
Yeah, pretty much January's been very busy for us. Where before Christmas, and maybe it was a holiday. I don't know. I don't know what drives it. It just,
Interpolation from the holiday.
it's up and down.
Can I ask a question,
Yes, ma'am.
possibly to that point?
Yeah.
Is that uptick, to what extent would you say that some of these cases you're dealing with have anything to do with social media? Or,
A lot of them do.
and so what I would say to that, and that was my assumption, these kids were at home for holidays for a long time.
So we figured.
Yeah.
Engaging in very unstructured time on social media.
Yeah.
And that just lends itself to problems.
Yeah.
Deanna, come on board.
Committee member.
Principal, and they can explain the ebb and flow of, you know, student behaviors and breaks and the weather getting warm and spring break, and, you know, there's all those sort of seasonal ebbs and flows throughout the year. You know, I think, you know, not too far apart from that, or, you know, at the end of the day, we're all just people, right? So same thing for our employees too. They're going through the holidays themselves and experiencing what they are in their lives. And I think we see a lot of that in this field of, kind of ups and downs seasonally.
Leah, you want to add?
I think that in terms of just the idea of the committee and I think keeping it focused would be a great idea. And then also the area that I see coming ahead with us is going to largely live a lot, I believe, in policy committee as well. So it might bode for, I think a lot of the changes that Colonel Henry was speaking on will end up going through policy committee, so you could end up with double meetings addressing a lot of the same subject area in the next several months coming up, because it's going to be a very policy-heavy 6 months in Title IX.
When that finally comes out, yeah. And that's how we got these policies updated when Jarrell got here. It went through the policy committee, so we've got not only you guys as our experts, but we've got the NCSBA, leading us in what they're finding out from the state legislature and the federal people. So yeah, and that's kind of like a given. It has to come through that.
So will there be an opportunity for a type of like subcommittee, like for the policy committee to like focus in, or does that doesn't exist?
Well, we could. I mean, you can't
Just
ever
to
say
avoid
no.
overlap.
But
just to
well, it would just
potentially
be like normal policy committee protocol is the subject matter experts, which would be school system people, would bring to the attention of the policy committee chair or the superintendent that we need to discuss this policy. And so we might not need a whole subcommittee on that, because you guys would have already done the work. And say, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're seeing, this is what we recommend. But yes, that's what policy committee, that's how it's supposed to work. But that's a good thought. Yeah, Christy?
I agree with, figuring out what needs to happen and who needs to be at the table. We've got some really helpful folks here. I believe I might have been at the table at that very first meeting, and it was very reactive. It's come a long way, and we've got a lot of really smart people with great communication helping us out as we kind of process through these. So I can see the progress we've made, the resources we've gained. So I think it's important to continue that work, and if it needs to be at that lower level, I think it's, as long as we continue the work.
Yes.
But what is the goal?
Yeah. And I wouldn't want to call your work at a lower level. It's just a different level.
Not at a committee level.
Yes.
At an advisory
level. Because all the work is, is relevant.
His work is not.
So yeah.
Not at all.
I still got to salute. He's a colonel after all. So yeah.
Yeah.
But
not from moving it from a committee.
Yes.
That as long as we continue the work with the right people in the room.
And with the updates, that come along with that. So, Kelly, do you want to add anything more?
Not necessarily.
Okay, Liz?
I thought part of the original question was to determine whether it wanted to be a committee or an advisory committee. Well, looking at your board policy between the two, basically the only difference is somebody from the board is not the chair. Mm-hmm. The work is the same, the people are the same, everything's the same. It looks like the only thing that's different is NHCS staff is chair and board sits on it.
Right.
So the work is not going to change. And, by no means did anybody consider you Mr. 262, irrelevant. We know the importance of the work. So none of that is going to change no matter what you decide to do. With your original question of board standing committee or an advisory committee.
Yeah, and board committees, just so you know, they're kind of formed because there's an issue that we need to either keep elevated, to get work, make sure that the work is getting done. But the advisories they're internal, they're doing their jobs that we hired them for, and advising the board, these are kinds of things that we might need to elevate again. So, and then that doesn't mean that you can't, if it's not a board committee, we can't form, to Malcolm's point, an ad hoc committee that say, oh, wow, we're straying off somewhere, that we may need to have another focus group or something. But yeah, thank you for that point, Kelly, because that's really basically the only difference on who runs it. I like to have things run as close to the source as possible, so that the people who are doing the work, like principals, they know what's going on in their building, and then they know where to get help. But, Deanna?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that what is important is the goal and continue working towards that goal with the right people at the table and the right perspectives at the table. I would want, because I do think there's something to be said for the fact that board members are elected officials and your job is to represent your constituents through, an unbiased lens. So having that voice at the table is important. But regardless, whether or not you are chairing the committee, I think doesn't necessarily impact the work.
Right. And we may not be able to even impact the work as much as a internal person can impact the work. Because we're not supposed to direct the work. But.
Right.
Leslie?
Oh, boy, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And having been here from the beginning, one of the things that really has bothered me about the fact that this committee has not met is that we had stated goals that we have not, that have just apparently been abandoned. We did the survey. One survey is not really complete data. We know where we stood at that one point in time. We're doing a lot of great work, a lot of great education, all of these things have been implemented. We have no idea if this has changed the experience of our students.
Bless you.
Or we may have an idea, but we don't have any data.
Yeah.
The thing to me, we had the reactive goal, but there was a real proactive goal with the original committee of making our students feel safe, or not making them feel safe, providing a safe environment. There's a difference between feeling safe and being safe. We want them to feel safe and we want them to be safe. I'm not convinced that we have met that goal. Some of that is out of our hands because the state has tied them, unfortunately. But I know a lot of parents and a lot of families are really fearful and feeling helpless. And I feel like we need those voices to come into whatever kind of committee it is. And we need a diverse set of ideas of how to address things and how to, with our hands tied in the way that they may be at the state level or the federal level at any given time, to still do what's best for these students. And when we're presented with challenges, to figure out, okay, we've got to follow the law, but we also have to make sure that these kids wake up tomorrow and are able to have an education without having all of these other things interfere, which is ultimately what this is about. So I don't know what the answer is in terms of which committee. I want to be a part of that process, and I want to see it done effectively. So being outside the school system, I don't really understand in a day-to-day manner how the function is going to be different. So I would say just, let's just get the work done.
Well, and you raised a really good point, Leslie, when you said that you know of other people who don't feel like it's happening. So do you have any insight, for this committee and however it lands on how we get people to report their concerns? Because, the school district and the board is only as good as the intel that they're getting.
Right.
So if anybody has any thoughts on how we can do that, and I mean, no matter what setup we come up with, we're going to need to make sure that, are our reporting avenues not clear enough? People still aren't comfortable with doing it for whatever reasons. So did you have any insight on that, or does anybody have any insight on that?
I think we need to do the survey again. We need to see what's changed. And we need to look at it in a couple of ways. We need to look at it just, the raw numbers of this many people from this group at this age have these feelings, but also follow, we did the survey
It was November of 2021.
Okay, so the kids who were middle school then, what is their experience now that they're starting high school? And are things, do they feel like things, and I mean, we should be able to see that pretty
So
clearly.
I'll jot that down as possibly one of our goals, to discuss with that. So,
One thing just to,
yeah,
and we are all still wrapping our head around the
Right.
new Parent Bill of Rights.
very
That
much so.
Might need to be taken into consideration, because I know that there are some caveats to serving students with that.
There are a ton.
Yes.
Yes, so so we're
Right.
kind of hamstrung on some of that kind of stuff, so we would need to, and again, kind of like what Colonel Hunter was talking about, we're very subjective with the who's in charge, who's the president, but where our school boards are also, change as well, so we have to work through all those kinds of things as well, because some of the things that we put in policy are not law, and some of the things we put in policy are law. So I'm not saying, right or wrong, but that is what, boards do. So, okay, well, anything else, for the good of the cause, that? So, all right, so I guess what, I really wasn't expecting, any sort of decision on that, but I guess what I do want to ask is, how do you think we go about making, do we want to make a recommendation to the entire board that, either we want to keep it exactly like it is, board runs it and board, manages it all, or if we want to give it a try with internally. I don't want to say anything to the board that is not representative of what we are. But I also, too, if we're going to go forward, then I want to be, I agree with Mr. Johnston, is that we do need to open up the application process, so that if there are people that we are missing at this table, and there are a bunch that are not here with us today, like student support, you're from Student Support Services, but, Julie Varnum, or Lisa Brenner, to represent that. Our SROs aren't here. We invited them. We do have new principals, so yay, thank you for stepping up for that. We do have, since we met before, our counselors, our lead counselors were broken into elementary and secondary, so we probably do need, we can't discount that this is happening in elementary school, because it is, it's happening, all around. Then we did have family life people, but when I scheduled the meeting, the Wellness Champ meeting was also today, so family life can't be here, which is, a bummer, for me. The What Clinic in and of itself, was not, they were invited, Amy Feith from the Carousel Center with that, and then we did have someone from Cape Fear Community College, as another higher education group. And a Safe Place to Go, she was one of our partners, a Safe Place, I think they kind of shortened their name a little bit. And then our Director of Safety, and PTA Council, so, they're not here. So there are some people that we did have a lot of people, because we had a lot of stakeholders, represented there. So I'm not one for having a meeting just to have a meeting. We definitely have to decide. But going forward, I think that the board is going to need to decide, and I would love your input on how best we go forward with the group, so that we can get the right people to establish the goal, and to Dr. Edge, looking right at you, my good friend here, whose name I can't remember, that we look at the reflective practices, and you had said you don't think we're doing anything, when maybe you just haven't heard that we're doing something. So that is, if you're saying that as a committee member, well, it's because we haven't met for 2 years.
Let me clarify that we're not doing anything as a committee. We gathered data.
Right.
And then that was it.
Right.
So.
Which, it was all unfortunate, because, we had COVID, in there. We had, a lot of turnover. We had all kinds of stuff, muddling our waters. So, I would like to, at our next board meeting, just, give a report, on what we discussed, and I have all the key points that we had here. So if we have a recommendation, I'm happy to take it. If we don't have a recommendation, I'm happy to say that as well. And then our board, ultimately, no matter what we say, the board ultimately decides. Ms. Bradford, did you have anything you wanted to add now that we've gone all the way around?
No, you pretty much summed it up. Based on a couple of meetings in the last 6 months that we've had, I think that the intention of the board is to keep it. I'm not sure that the chairman would have appointed me here. It wasn't on the list that I had turned in to request. So he wanted to, have the group come back together and do what your original goals were. So I don't know how the board would vote, but just based on what they've said, I think they like the idea that it's this kind of committee.
Yes,
Just
and
my
then
feel
so,
for
and I haven't had that conversation with our board chair, so I would need to have that as well. One thing that I do distinctly remember the beginning, when I first brought this up in October, was that our board wanted to make sure that we had regular updates on that. So the quarterly updates, end of the semester updates, annual updates, the board can decide, what kind of updates they want. So we want to always make sure that John Henry has plenty of work to do. So yeah, so that's and so I will bring back then if we have an overwhelming desire to do one versus the other, I will mention that to the board. If we don't really have an overwhelming desire, other than we want the work to continue and we would like to be a part of that, then I'm happy to do that. I'll bullet out our points and I'll talk to them about it. And then we can decide. And then we'll have to put out the universal application to make sure that everybody, within the district and within the community has the opportunity to be on the committee. And then we just got to kind of figure out, how to get that. I don't know how many applications we would get, but to make sure that yes, sir.
So I just have a question.
Sure.
Just because of my ignorance of Board of Education.
We want you, so no, you're on the team. Yeah.
In terms of the difference between the two options, which one, if there is one, would actually keep this as a heightened issue with the board itself?
The board meeting. That's what I was thinking after you said that. Because you have more cases, you had 256 last year and already 7 this year. We're on fire. We've got a change of DPI this year, possibly. We have a change of president this year. So that seems to me that it is heightened awareness. So it seems to me like now's the better time to keep it the way it is than it is to not downgrade it, but I serve on the curriculum as an advisor, and we only meet 4 times a year. And our accomplishments so far haven't been all that, magnified. We did change a couple of policies just recently, but that was just a reactive thing. So to me, it seems like if you want to keep it top of mind awareness, kick it back up like this. Use the universal application that we work so darn hard to create, and get the stakeholders and do it that way. And Leslie, I'm advocating that we have a new committee within the school district for student safety. And I would think that you would want to make application for that, because what you've said comes under student safety as well as this. But, as long as we have board members that want to lead committees and put in the work, that direct input to the board is valuable. Sometimes the board says, well, I don't really care what you said, we're going to go over here. But the goal is that, the board committee comes to the board and says, this is what happened, and they take that advice as somewhat expert advice and move forward. So it's just my opinion. I've only been here an hour and 10 minutes, so.
Well, it might fix the reaction thought if we come in, because it started on reaction, but if we stick it to the board and stick to this board committee meeting and go with the goal of preventative, then we won't go back to reactive, right?
Yeah, and so, so this is one of those kind of things that Ms. Bradford and I do disagree on, is that, to me, the level of work resides in the school system, because the board doesn't do the work. And to have a regular update, you know, we can still keep it elevated. Like, if you come in quarterly and go, look at this, then we're like, okay, then we need, Dr. Faust, we need you to change that. So it really is just kind of, you know, and a matter of opinion. I don't think the work is going away. And with the amount of training that we're doing and the visits that you do, you guys can attest, you know, you are working, and all three of you sitting right there are doing that. And, you know, Mr. Johnson, you know, doing, you know, not investigations, but just, you know, being on there, and our counselors, they're seeing, you know, what's happening. So it really is kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I don't think it's going to lose its importance. I want the work to be done. I want the committee to be managed at the lowest level possible, and then to update us. But, you know, I can't speak for the whole group. So if anybody, if you want to mull that over, you know, send me an email, you know, let me, you know, if something comes to you, then our next board meeting isn't, you know, until March the 12th. So we got a month. I do need to turn my stuff in, you know, I'll turn it in to be on the agenda anyway, so that we can hear a report, you know, at our agenda review meeting. We can discuss it at our regular meeting. So this wasn't meant to kind of like put anybody on the spot. It was just, you know, to get our minds, you know, flowing. We got some really good ideas on things that I think will happen no matter how the committee is managed. You know, and, you know, Kelly's point was very well taken. It's just a matter of who has the responsibility for it. So it's not going to go away. I mean, I'm not advocating at all for taking it off of our radar. It's just a matter of which column does it go in. Where is it most effectively managed? And so, you know, we'll just put that to the whole board and see what they think. But, you know, your input has been great, you know, on that. I appreciate that. You know, we've got a month, you know, so if you've got anything else that you want to share, you know, please feel free to send me an email, call me up. You know, if you don't have my number, I'll give it to you. So yeah, if we don't have anything else, we do not have to sit here till 5 o'clock, and we can all go home in the pouring down rain. But I just thank you so much for being here and for your continued interest in helping make sure, and I love this, making sure that our schools are comfortable and safe for our staff and our students, because that's what we're here for, because we can't learn, you know, if we're not feeling safe, and we can't teach if we're not feeling safe, and we can't provide all the other thousands of services that our staff employees, you know, provide for us. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
The one thing that I would like to say,
pardon me,
is when are we meeting again?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, right now we're not going to meet again.
Okay.
Until I make the report to the board, because I don't think that we should start gathering more people if we don't know how we're going to be managed. And one of the things people are going to want to know is, when are we going to meet? You know, is it going to be every Monday, you know, at 3 o'clock? Or is it going to be, you know, or does the team need to do that? Because a lot of people will make their decision on, can they even come? So a meeting will be forthcoming.
Okay.
But I would posture not at least until April, so that we have time for the board to hear our input and make that decision on how we want that to be managed. Does that make sense, or is that acceptable?
That does make sense. I just am so scared that it's going to be 2 years.
No. So, but and anything you want to send, let's just get that on, no matter who manages it. Either me as the Title IX committee chair, or Colonel Henry. You know, one of us will keep the main file. Both of us will probably keep whatever the file is. But if it's a board committee, we won't get to know anything more than you know, than if it's an advisory committee, because, you know, it's just, a lot of it is private, and so we're not allowed to talk about, you know, like what happened and all that kind of stuff. But we having regular updates on how many trainings we've had, and, you know, how many visits we've had, or what programs that our community partners. Luckily, we have you guys through SHAC, so we're going to get a lot of that anyway, you know, no matter what. And you guys will, you know, will probably end up being on 2 committees, but with the same perspective, but just a different group. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
So I'm curious about the whole privacy, obviously that's super important. How much information can the Title IX department share in terms of the severity of cases or, I think that's
It's
important
probably
data.
just more the wave tops of the statistics. Hey, here's how many sexual assaults we dealt with last semester.
Okay,
Here's
so-
how many touchings or, stuff
Right,
like
yeah.
that. So never any names or
Of course not.
personal information or anything like that. Probably not even,
We won't know the school.
yeah, I
Right,
won't know the
yeah.
school. I mean, sometimes when you tell the story, it's like, I wouldn't even go that way either. Oh, we
Yeah.
did a case, let's leave the names out of it, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I wouldn't
People
even go
can
there
figure it
either,
out,
because
yeah.
people would figure out. So I would stay way away.
But
from
we
that.
know, but in terms of, sexual assaults at the high school level, middle school
Right,
level,
separate by
elementary
school,
level.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the answer's probably in the stats.
Yeah, and some of the other stats that you had, shared with us, well, you didn't share, was like the number of cases that happened off school grounds, number of cases that reported that were inconclusive or unsubstantiated, number of cases that had the interactive process brief,
right.
the number of cases where a formal complaint was filed, versus, did we just hear about it and we managed it? So those are the kinds of things that, you can tell us on the helicopter level, but, yeah.
So, let me ask a question then. Is Ethics 360 a formal complaint system?
No, well,
I didn't think
it's
because it can be
it's a
anonymous.
reporting system, but you gotta be careful when you use the word formal complaint. 'cause
That's what I'm
part of
saying,
the due
that's more
process.
like calling
I think that may
your
clear it up
office.
too, is explaining that
Yeah.
entire
It's probably what we talked about
process.
this morning, yeah.
Yeah.
But- So that word formal complaint, I
Yeah.
feel like that's a Title IX term, which is it's a very strong term. So if a parent or student decides to do a formal complaint, that kicks in the whole Title IX due process.
Right.
So when you say, is that the 360
It's
formal
just
complaint form? It's
an
not.
informal reporting system. that
reporting
we-
It's a reporting system, yes, sir. And, and then maybe you can just give a little touch of, when it becomes a Title IX reporting case, then there are certain timelines that we have to do versus a regular case, you can just get in there and, I don't say regular,
Right.
non-Title IX formal complaint. So could you just give us like just a quickie on that one?
Yes, ma'am. So we get a report, and you guys do this,
But others might
We get a
not, yeah.
report, and it could be sexual harassment. So that triggers us to do what's called the interactive process brief. And we have 72 hours to at least offer that to mom and dad. So that's what we do. I get a sexual harassment or something that could be sexual harassment. And they go out and give the IPB to mom and dad, and she goes out and gives the IPB. And the IPB is basically what rights the parents have under Title IX. And one of the two big rights are, one, the right to supportive services, which is how we solve a lot of the reports. We solve them at the principal level, just getting mom and dad in there, and hey, I just want the respondent to leave my student alone. Okay, got it. We'll separate in the class and we're good to go. So that's one right. The second right is a right to a formal complaint, and that's where mom and dad decide, you know what, I'm writing out a complaint and I'm submitting this formal complaint. And that's going to kick off a review process by me, which I can dismiss that if certain things happen, or I accept it and I turn Leah loose and she goes and finds out all the things, and then the whole due process thing starts where both parties get to see all the evidence, both parties get to ask questions of each other and other witnesses, and that whole process is going to take anywhere between 4 to 6 months to accomplish. So
Depending on.
depending on the
Yeah.
facts of the case and what's going on. And there's a lot of off-ramps there too, Kelly, that there's an informal resolution that we can do, that the board allowed us to do. Sometimes I'll go out and we'll give the IPB, and there's no deadline on a formal complaint, but mom and dad, we just don't hear from them again. And so, all right, so no formal complaint's made. Doesn't mean it's going away. It's just we're going to kick it back to the principal, and the principal's going to handle it like they handle any other misconduct. So, yeah, hopefully that answers. I mean, there's a whole process to it. It's pretty lengthy, the whole Title IX process when it goes out. And some of the numbers I had there, I mean, I've been here since 2020, and cases that have gone the distance, gone the whole way with a formal complaint is very small. So we start with 250 reports, and at the other end of the pipe, the formal complaint actually done, could probably count them on my fingers.
Yeah, so let's say 2021, 22, formal complaint filed 11, 22, 23, formal complaint filed 4, 23, 24, formal complaint filed 0. You know, so, and then maybe one of the other things that, you know, we could say is number of cases resolved, you know, closed, you know, so that we do show that we have made progress, you know, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and so from what we understand that K through 12 is a lot more paperwork, you know, paper reporting, and at K-12, I mean, higher education, it's more, we're talking, you know, we're having those kind of things, but, you know, we're doing a lot more interviewing and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different.
It's a more lengthy process.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, still.
Yeah.
And there are additional things that are just more required on higher education
Yeah.
level. You can be a little more lenient in some ways on K through 12 just because you are dealing with students, but
With, like,
with
babies, you know, youngsters.
babies. But essentially, you go into our land, you're having required hearings, live hearings, as opposed to something that's not required for K through 12. So then you're definitely making it more of almost a legal trial, so
Yeah.
to speak.
And that's just where the law is written.
Right.
Yeah. Does that get you know, some of the things? Okay, well, you know, all in favor of saying goodbye, you know, or au revoir until we meet again? Aye?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Thank you again for coming, and have a good week.
Good job.